As someone who's really trying to maximize progress right now, build more muscle, stay lean, have a ton of energy day to day, recovery is something I take pretty seriously. Because the truth is, the better you recover, the more progress you're going to make in the gym, in life, everywhere, honestly. So today I want to walk you through 8 things I'm focused on to get the most out of my recovery and hopefully help you maximize yours too. Now, recovery is quite the buzzword in fitness right now. I'm sure if your Instagram feed looks anything like mine, one out of every 5 to 6 reels, somebody's hopping into cold plunge or sauna or doing some type of recovery therapy. But the thing is, there are no real recovery hacks, and most of what you see online is the 0.1% stuff, icing on the cake. And yeah, those things might matter if you're looking to optimize at the highest level, but for the 99% of us, what we need to focus on is the foundation, what will move the needle the most. So the first thing we need to consider to optimize our recovery is managing our training volume, making sure we're not consistently exceeding our recovery capacity. Now, I know for a lot of us who love training, who are highly motivated, our default setting is more is better. More sets, more volume, more effort, but recovery doesn't work that way. You don't get better from the training you do. You get better from the training you can actually recover from. I like to think about it like your body has a recovery bucket, and every stressor you experience, whether that's training, poor sleep, work stress, mental fatigue, life, responsibilities, relationships, it all fills that bucket. The scientific term for this is the allostatic load, the total stress your body is dealing with at any given moment. If you keep adding more training on top of that without addressing recovery, eventually that bucket will overflow. And when that happens, progress stops because you're now exceeding your recovery capacity. Your lifts stall, you start feeling sluggish in the gym, you get irritable, maybe injured, you notice motivation to train is down, and your body is no longer adapting. So you need to train within your current recovery capacity or recovery bucket. And the easiest way to know if you're doing that, tracking your workouts. If you're constantly progressing, if weights are going up, reps are increasing, your performance is solid, that's a great sign your training volume is appropriate for your current recovery capacity. But if your lifts are stalling or going down, you're probably exceeding what your body can handle at that given moment. That's when it's time to scale back. That might mean reducing volume or training frequency, or it might mean adding a deload week or just adding an extra rest day. And I know that could feel counterintuitive, but here's what I tell every client I work with. The goal isn't to train as hard as possible. The goal is to train as hard as you can recover from. You will only adapt to the degree you are recovered. And this is why training volume, and more importantly, your ability to recover from it, is the biggest lever we can pull when it comes to recovery. It's the foundation, and what's super cool is the better you get at managing the next 7 things we're about to cover, the more capacity you'll gain, the bigger your bucket will get, so you'll be able to add in more training volume without that bucket overflowing. Now that we understand our recovery capacity and managing training volume, the most important thing to consider when looking to maximize your recovery is sleep. How much are you getting, and what's the quality of it like? And I know everybody says sleep is important, but most people still for some reason treat it like an optional upgrade instead of what it really is. Quite literally the foundation everything else is built on. Sleep is where your body actually repairs tissues, generates hormones, consolidates motor learning, resets your nervous system, recovers from inflammation, immune support, and the list goes on. And here's where circadian rhythm comes into play. This is your body's internal clock, the 24-hour rhythm that regulates hormones, energy levels, and all key recovery processes. If your sleep is inconsistent, if your bedtime and wake time are all over the place, your body can't predict when to release melatonin, cortisol, growth hormone, or any of the other critical recovery tools built into your biology. So what can we do to optimize our circadian rhythm and therefore our sleep? Well, it starts with getting light in your eyes within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking. This will anchor your circadian rhythm, telling your brain, okay, it's morning, time to wake up, time to be alert. It will support your body's natural cortisol spike in the morning and then lead us to secreting more melatonin later that night. Next is consistency. Go to bed and wake up at roughly the same time every day, even on weekends if you can, because the more consistent you can be, the better. Your brain and body thrive on routine. When your sleep and wake cycle is consistent, all the systems that depend on it, like tissue repair, hormonal regulation, even mental clarity, become far more efficient. We also want to get our sleep environment dialed in. We want a bat cave, so keep your room cool. About 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius is ideal. Make it dark, like as dark as you can get it. Blackout curtains, no LEDs, and then quiet, so earplugs can come into play. Maybe a soft white noise machine. Now, at least 60 minutes before bed, we want to avoid blue light or throw on some blue light glasses, which is what I personally do. If you can, also get rid of any bright light about an hour before bed as well. So what I do is I just bought a red light lamp and I'll put that on about an hour before bed so I'm not blunting my melatonin secretion. It's super important we get good sleep because poor sleep doesn't just make you feel groggy and fatigued the next day, but it ramps up ghrelin, our hunger hormone, lowers leptin, our satiety hormone, increases cortisol, reduces HRV, and messes with glucose metabolism, which is a pretty good recipe for fat gain, muscle loss, lower motivation, and much slower recovery. But not only will sleep determine how well you repair and then adapt, it will also largely dictate your hormone production. And it goes without saying, the more testosterone and growth hormone you have, the better you're going to be able to recover, the better you'll adapt to your training, and the faster you'll make progress. And considering testosterone and sleep are tightly linked, and the highest pulse of growth hormone occurs shortly after you fall asleep, and the amount secreted directly correlates with how much deep sleep you're getting, the quality and consistency of your sleep is extremely important. So if your sleep isn't nailed down, none of the other recovery strategies we're going to cover are going to work nearly as well as they could. Fix this first and you'll see massive returns across the board. The third thing when looking to boost your recovery is doing less, not more. Now that probably sounds a little counterintuitive in a world where we have all of these optimization tools and protocols, but real recovery lives in what's called the parasympathetic state. Very quickly to explain, the autonomic nervous system is the part of your nervous system that operates automatically. It regulates things like heart rate, digestion, respiratory rate, and more without you having to think about it. It has two primary branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Think of your sympathetic as your gas pedal. It activates the fight or flight response, increasing heart rate, stress hormones like cortisol, blood flow. Then we have the parasympathetic side. This is our rest and digest state, which is your brake pedal. When you're constantly stimulated, scrolling on your phone, caffeinating, training, high stress, work, you're living in that sympathetic, high alert state. And while that state is great for performance, it's not where we want to be to maximize our recovery. Parasympathetic activation is what allows your body to downshift and actually adapt to the training you're doing. So don't look at less like being lazy. It's about creating the space for your body to enter that rest and digest mode. That might look like walking without your phone, or using self-regulated breath work, box breathing, or even extended exhales. Even something as simple as walking in nature, doing a short guided breath session with apps like State can shift your nervous system toward recovery. So it's about loosening your grip and balancing that drive that is great with some intentional down regulation. Because if you're on the highway and you never let your foot off the gas, you're going to rear end somebody eventually and crash. So to boost our recovery, intentionally doing less, watching a show, cuddling with your girl or guy, is a serious high ROI move for recovery. The fourth thing we can do, and we're getting a little tactical here because what gets measured gets managed, is data. HRV, your heart rate variability, and resting heart rate, which devices like Whoop, the Oura Ring, or even Apple and Garmin watches give us to get an insight on what's actually going on under the hood. HRV, or heart rate variability, reflects the balance between your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, what we just went over. A higher HRV generally indicates more adaptability and recovery, while a consistently low HRV can be a sign that your nervous system is under stress, whether from training, poor sleep, emotional stress, or even being sick. Now, a resting heart rate tells a similar story from a different angle. If your resting heart rate is trending upward, especially first thing in the morning, that can signal systemic stress or fatigue. And on the flip side, a lower, stable resting heart rate over time usually reflects better recovery status. But you never make decisions based on one number. I sometimes get clients text me, especially my guys who are super analytical and driven. Oscar, my HRV is in the bin today. Should I take a day off the gym? Absolutely not. It's all about trends and standard deviations over time. Your HRV might spike or dip on any given day. That's pretty normal. What matters is the pattern. If you normally sit at, let's say, an HRV of 60, and it drops to 30 for 4 to 5 days, and your resting heart rate is elevated, then that's a signal to maybe pull back a bit. I also like to use a standard deviation calculation. This gives you a range that's normal for you. Let's say your HRV average is 40, but your standard deviation is 20. That means you regularly swing from 20 to 60. So if you wake up and your HRV is 37, that's nothing. But if you normally fluctuate just a few points either way, and suddenly you're 10 plus points out of the range, now that is something you might want to pay attention to. The goal is nervous system stability, not just hitting a higher number all the time. So if your HRV is doubling or halving every other day, that suggests your system is hypersensitive to reactive. But if it's stable, no matter what you do, that's the kind of resilience we're after. So the key when it comes to using these metrics is informed decision making. The goal isn't to let a wearable tell you how to live your life. It's to use the data like a dashboard. If you get in your car, you see that oil light flashing, You don't freak out, but you definitely don't ignore it. Same exact thing here. A red recovery score on Whoop, for example, isn't a pass to skip the gym that day, but it is something to be mindful of and take into consideration when looking at your training, nutrition, sleep, and stress as a whole. So I like to look at 7-day and 30-day trends, layering that in with context. How you're feeling, how you're performing, your current training and nutrition, how you're sleeping, to then make changes to your plan. The fifth thing to consider when looking to boost your recovery is nutrition. We all know nutrition is important. It impacts everything from our energy and training output to our ability to recover, think clearly, sleep well, and even stay emotionally present. Remember, training is the stimulus. Recovery is the adaptation, but you can't adapt if your body doesn't have the raw materials to rebuild. That starts with your caloric intake. If you're under eating in a deficit, whether intentionally for fat loss or unintentionally because you're busy or stressed, you're not going to be giving your system what it needs to maximize recovery, repair muscle tissue, restore glycogen, or even produce the hormones involved in recovery. So calorie intake is the first part. To optimize your recovery, we want to be at maintenance or a slight surplus. Second is macronutrient balance. Protein is huge. We want to aim for 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight for most people training hard. Then we've got fats, which are way too underrated when it comes to recovery. Fats are the backbone of hormonal function, particularly testosterone and other anabolic hormones. They also help regulate inflammation, support the nervous system, and help you absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. And I like to aim for around 0.3 to 0.7 grams per pound of body weight coming from high-quality sources like extra virgin olive oil, fatty fish, avocados, nuts, seeds, eggs, grass-fed animal fats, whatever works in your context and what you enjoy. Then we have carbohydrates, which are your muscle's preferred fuel source, but also your nervous system's preferred fuel source, as well as an essential for fueling our training, but also replenishing glycogen post-training. So once you set up your protein and fat goals, run up your carbohydrates. Then we've got micronutrients. Things like zinc, vitamin D, B vitamins, and electrolytes as well, like sodium, potassium, and magnesium. These are, again, massively underrated when it comes to nervous system health, energy production, mitochondrial health, and tissue repair. Now, you don't need to overcomplicate this, but a diverse, whole food diet with plenty of color, fruits, vegetables, some fermented foods will cover most of your bases. Now, we all know life gets busy. So aim for structure. I like to meal plan so I don't have to think about it, which works great if you're someone who's busy. If you have, let's say, more time on your hands, macro tracking is great. But I'd plan your days either the night before or sit down on a Sunday and plan your week's meals with an app like Chronometer, because that will give you your micronutrient intake as well as your macros. Basically a leveled up version of MyFitnessPal. Hydration deserves its own mention here as well, because even mild hydration can impair recovery, increase the perceived exertion of exercise, delay muscle repair, have a pretty significant effect on cognitive function. So having water with you during the day and aiming for 2 to 4 liters a day based on your body weight, along with an adequate amount of sodium, at least 2,000 milligrams per day, and potassium around 4,700 milligrams per day, will have you pretty optimally hydrated. And then you can adjust from there based on how much you sweat, the climate you live in, etc. The sixth thing to consider when looking to boost your recovery is alcohol. Now, I'm not here to demonize it or say you can never have a drink again, but if you're serious about maximizing recovery, performance, and adaptation, you need to know what alcohol is actually doing to your system. The bottom line is alcohol, in quite literally every way, contributes negatively to recovery. It disrupts sleep architecture, it increases resting heart rate, suppresses REM and deep sleep, and tanks heart rate variability. Even 1 or 2 drinks can increase your sympathetic tone and slow down the repair process that happens during high quality sleep. So beyond just feeling groggy the next morning or hungover, there is a cascade of recovery systems that get compromised. So what you have to ask yourself is, what's the cost of those drinks based on where I'm at in my training, my current goals, my current phase, my current recovery in my life? And this is where nuance comes in. Social connection absolutely matters. Enjoying some drinks with friends isn't the end of the world. It might even be great for your mental health in context. But when alcohol becomes frequent, like every weekend or even every other weekend, that's when it starts compounding. So how do you navigate it? Well, for me and most people I work with, it's about intentionality. Ask yourself, is this worth it right now? Am I okay with the trade-off? If you're deep into a fat loss phase, feeling already run down or struggling with sleep, alcohol is likely pulling you further from your goals. But if you're celebrating something, or you're in a phase where maybe your physique goals aren't your number one priority, maybe it fits. And if you want to have that drink, awesome, but accept the trade-off. For me, as an example, I was just on vacation with my boys and we were going out, and yeah, I'm drinking, but I'm sticking to 3 to 4 shots max of tequila. I got my hangover protocol ready to go, which you guys can check out in a previous video did. I'll link that in the description. So I'm mitigating the damage, but nevertheless, I accepted the trade-off. The seventh thing we can do that will have a massive impact on our recovery is managing stress. Now, stress in all forms, emotional, work, training, relationships, puts you in that sympathetic fight or flight state we talked about earlier. And if we don't actively counterbalance that with parasympathetic practices, it can stack up pretty fast. So there are some basics to manage stress that are extremely effective and free. First, simply getting outside for even 10 to 20 minutes can shift your autonomic tone, reduce cortisol, and boost your mood as well. Walking in nature, as wild as it sounds, has a good amount of data behind it. And there was even a study that showed people who just watched videos of forests experienced a measurable drop in cortisol. So other than getting our steps in outside, we've got guided breath work, is again low effort, super high impact, talking 2 to 5 minutes of something like box breathing, 4-7-8 breathing, or even using an app, which I'm a big fan of, like State, are very effective at shifting you into more of a parasympathetic tone. Journaling is another underrated tool. Just one session a week where you brain dump your thoughts, reflect on gratitude, or simply write out your to-do list can help reduce your perceived stress load. And then there's perception. This is a big one because not all stress is bad. What matters more is how you perceive it. If you view your workload, your training, your challenges as negative, you'll stay wired and anxious. But if you frame them as meaningful, purposeful, even chosen stressors, your body will respond better. So how you interpret stress plays a decent role in how your nervous system responds to it. When you got the basics down, you've incorporated some of the things we went over. If you're someone who is under a good amount of stress, supplements can be a solid addition. Ashwagandha KSM66 has great evidence in reducing cortisol and improving stress resilience. Relora is another underrated one, and Rhodiola rosé is great. It's my personal favorite for some additional stress resilience throughout the day. The eighth and final point is the icing on the cake: recovery tools. Now, this is where most people start, but in reality, these are the least impactful compared to the previous 7. Things like cold plunges, saunas, massages, compression boots. Yes, they definitely can help, but you're not going to out sauna a poor sleep schedule or cold plunge your way through chronic stress and poor nutrition. But with that said, these tools can be great add-ons if you are already in a good routine. Things like the sauna 3 times per week for 20 minutes at 170 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit have evidence for improving cardiovascular health and recovery. Cold exposure upon wake is what I like to do. We get some anti-inflammatory effects, some brown fat activation, but I do it more because of the positive mental effect you get from that boost in dopamine. But keep it away from your training if your goal is muscle growth, because it will blunt the inflammatory response needed to grow muscle tissue from your training. Massages, if you have the luxury, are great, not so much for the actual action on the muscle tissue itself, but more of its very relaxing nature. And then compression boots, if you got them, those can help as well. Basically, they help move fluid and boost blood flow through those lower limbs, which can aid in clearing metabolic waste and bringing in nutrients to that area. But none of these are required. They're helpful. Sure, they can be enjoyable, ritualistic, offer some mental benefits, but the real recovery still comes from the boring, basic stuff done well over and over again. And those are the 8 things I like to focus on to maximize recovery. If you feel I've missed anything that you want to emphasize, please drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.